Hey everyone, welcome back to News Girls. I'm Wren, and today I thought we would go through a roundup of some recent moves by RFK Jr., Health and Human Services Secretary, and the Trump administration in general, and question if they are really making America healthy again. Because MAHA is supposed to be about taking on the things that are making Americans sick. That's what Trump and RFK Jr. said that they wanted to do. But then why are they doing things like opening the door to selling flavored vapes, or relaxing tanning bed restrictions for minors, or going after antidepressants? Because the more you look at moves like this, the more it feels like they're not actually trying to make America healthy again, but they're trying to cater to the culture war or donors at the root of a lot of these decisions. So first, RFK just made it easier for kids to use tanning beds. He halted a proposed FDA ban on minors that using tanning beds. He cited support for personal choice and parental decision making, even though obviously health officials say using a tanning bed greatly increases your risk of skin cancer, and that is worse, it's exacerbated if you start before the age of 20. The proposed ban would have also required prospective users to sign a risk acknowledgement certification before they could use a tanning bed that would basically notify them about the scientifically proven link between UV exposure and skin cancer. It reminds me of like the warnings on the back of cigarettes. But now RFK Jr. is saying those precautions are not necessary. He says this is a personal choice up to parents and up to the kids, and that he doesn't want to put a burden on small businesses by removing this section of their clientele. But this conversation reminds me a lot of cigarettes, because you could say the same thing about smoking. Like, okay, that could be a personal choice. That's up to the parents if they want their child to be able to smoke cigarettes. But we know the health impacts of that. So there's a reason we have age restrictions on that. What's the difference between tanning beds? There's so many of the same health impacts. And RFK Jr. actually noted in his withdrawal letter, ironically, that he had also received thousands of comments from cancer advocacy groups, law firms, medical professionals discussing the dangers of UV radiation from sunlamp products and how vulnerable young people are. So he acknowledged that these groups are right, but despite that, he still won't take any action to protect children from them. And skin cancer is the most common form of cancer. 1 in 5 Americans have it in their lifetime. So there's no other cancer with a number like that. And the majority of melanoma cases are from UV exposure. And that if you use a tanning bed before the age of 20, the risk of developing melanoma, which is the most invasive and deadly form of skin cancer, increases by almost 50%. So how is this making America healthy again? You're going to hear me ask this question a lot today. We know RFK loves to go to a good tanning bed. We can obviously tell that just by looking at him, but also he's been photographed leaving many tanning salons. And it's interesting that his whole platform is protecting kids. He's really made kids specifically the cornerstone of a lot of what he said he was going to do, especially with vaccines. So this seems like a pretty blatant way he is actually making them more vulnerable. And then, of course, the Trump administration just issued a new policy that could allow tobacco and vape companies to once again sell flavored e-cigarettes. And this was such a debate. I'm sure you heard about how the FDA commissioner was actually forced to resign earlier this week because he had resisted allowing the FDA to make this rule change that would open the door to flavored vapes. But Trump personally pressured him to do so. He finally did it and then resigned. And remember, the FDA is under the HHS umbrella. So RFK obviously knew everything that was going on. He oversees it. And he actually recently spoke about how he's, quote, working to get as many American vapes on the market as possible to replace Chinese vapes. And keep in mind that many of these vape companies are big donors to Trump. So in case you didn't know, flavored vapes like candy or fruit flavored had been banned to keep them out of the hands of children. And so the FDA allowed companies to only sell tobacco or menthol flavored vapes. But this new FDA policy could allow companies to sell flavored vapes in gas stations and convenience stores. And the argument in favor of opening this door to flavored vape products hinges on the idea that the ban of them has allowed the illicit market to flourish. In fact, the illicit market now makes up the majority of the $6 billion e-cigarette market in the US. Obviously, we have to crack down on the illegal products, but why would making them legal be the solution? It's not like, oh, there's a huge illicit market of cocaine. I guess we have to make cocaine legal. That's not how it should work. And actually, a former FDA tobacco chief who worked under Democratic and Republican administrations and helped build the FDA's modern vaping approval system said this plan to stop enforcing rules on e-cigarettes would allow an untold number of products onto the market. The government is essentially rewarding companies that ignored the rules and kept making these flavored products. And so this FDA rollback looks more like a win for politically connected nicotine companies, like I said, that are donating to President Trump, than an actual public health victory. And obviously, there are some benefits of vape products because they can help adults who are smokers quit cigarettes. But experts warn that loosening the enforcement of flavored nicotine products could just fuel a whole new generation of kids becoming addicted to nicotine. We all know the health risks of vaping. It's lung and breathing problems, heart issues. They can explode. We just do not want to make it easier for kids to get their hand on these products. And the FDA decision also potentially opens the door for companies to sell flavored Zyn products. So that's like nicotine pouches. And that's something we know RFK loves, because he actually popped one into his mouth during his confirmation hearing. RFK Jr. has also made taking on anti-anxiety meds and antidepressants like SSRIs, which are very common, one of the cornerstones of his mission. And he actually just announced a plan to reduce the, quote, overprescribing of these psychiatric medications and support alternative treatment options. And he has made so many unfounded claims about these drugs. He claimed that they were linked to violence and mass shootings, even though there's no scientific evidence that these antidepressants cause anyone to become more violent. He also said that they are linked to serious risks to developing fetuses when women take them during pregnancies. Again, there's very, very low risk when you take them during pregnancies. He also said the withdrawal from these antidepressants is worse than that from heroin. But that one could be a projection because we know RFK was a heroin user for a decade when he was younger. And actually, if you have not read the revelations that just came out of the book that was based on his own diaries about his extensive drug use, the way that he forced it onto his little brother, which is really disturbing, then I highly recommend you go read our full report about it on our Substack, because it does color the lens through which we view his actions now. And psychiatrists and experts have expressed concern about this plan, saying that RFK's emphasis on overprescribing is misplaced given how unbalanced access to care for mental health conditions is. Depression remains the leading cause of disability in the world, and only about 11% take prescription meds for depression. Suicide rates have risen 35% in the last 2 decades. So that's a staggering, sad number. I don't know how you see that and think, oh, we need to take antidepressants off the market. Again, it just feels more like virtue signaling to his wellness conservatism, would be proponents of alternative treatment options as opposed to actually trying to make America healthier. And I want to end on looking ahead at what RFK has his sights on coming up. Over the next few months, he'll have to decide whether to recommend a new flu or COVID vaccine. He will have to sign off on a new Moderna shot that uses mRNA technology, which RFK has said is dangerous. And he'll have to decide whether or not to release funding to developing countries for vaccines, which he has said are unsafe. And we know that his allies in the anti-vaccine movement expect him to hold the line and not approve or at least hold up all of these vaccine developments. So it'll be very interesting to see what he does. And I unfortunately have a feeling we'll be back here making a "Is this really MAHA?" part 2 after he makes those decisions. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to follow News Girls on all social medias, everywhere you get your podcasts, and Substack. Bye, you guys.